Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever found yourself just completely hooked on a true crime story? Like, you need to know everything, devouring every twist, every turn, every clue. It's a genre that's just absolutely exploded, especially in podcasting. And today we're doing a deep dive into one of the real giants, Crime Junkie. It's a show that, it's captivated millions, built this huge community, and, well, it's also sparked some really important discussions. So we've got a great overview here, mostly pulling from a detailed Wikipedia article. It's pretty comprehensive, covers everything from the show's like surprising start, its massive rise, its impact, and yeah, even some major controversy that popped up. Our mission, basically, is to explore what makes Crime Junkie tick. How did it get so popular? What's the story behind its journey, the good and the maybe more challenging parts? So by the end, you'll walk away well-informed, with a real understanding of this like cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, what's really fascinating to me looking into this is how Crime Junkie isn't just a popular show. It's kind of a perfect case study. It really shows how digital media is changing, how creators build these incredibly strong bonds with audiences. So we'll look at its specific format, its, truly incredible reception, and yeah, those critical questions it raised about, sourcing, ethics, and podcasting. It really makes you wonder, what is that magic mix? Personality, production, the topic. What does it take to hit #1 and actually stay there for years? And, what challenges come with that kind of success? Especially when you're retelling sensitive stories often reported elsewhere, to this huge, eager audience. It tells you a lot about the genre itself.
Absolutely. And the origin story here is always so interesting. With Crime Junkie, it almost feels, I don't know, a bit like fate, doesn't it? This is where it gets really interesting. The hosts, Ashley Flowers and Brit Prawat, they've known each other literally since birth, born on the same day, grew up together. And apparently, from way back, they both had this intense interest in true crime. You can kind of feel that long-standing connection in their interaction on the show. It feels genuine. And Flowers' journey into podcasting, it wasn't just like a random jump. It was more gradual. Before Crime Junkie, she was already involved, serving on the board for Crime Stoppers of Central Indiana, real-world stuff. She even hosted this radio segment, Murder Monday, on Radio Now W100.9. It was shorter, like 20 minutes. Ran for about a year, and the whole point was to reach a younger audience for Crime Stoppers. And it was during that time she kind of realized, hey, the podcasts out there weren't quite what she wanted to listen to. That specific mix of storytelling and, well, personal connection. And bam, that was the spark. She launched Crime Junkie in December 2017. Weekly episodes right from the start.
And that early dedication, it's pretty staggering when you think about it. Flowers was working full-time at a hospital at first, juggling that and building the podcast. It wasn't until 2019, after like 2 years of grinding it out, that she could finally switch to Crime Junkie full-time. That's a huge leap. Shows the kind of investment it takes. Stepping back, you see this immense commitment to just the production grind. Flowers estimated, I think, that each episode takes roughly 30 hours a week. Research, writing, editing, prep. And she does most of the research herself. Brit Prawat leads on some episodes, but Ashley handles the bulk. 30 hours per episode, it's practically another full-time job right there. It's not just a hobby.
30 hours. Wow, that is intense. Makes you appreciate what goes into it. And what about the format itself? How do they actually structure an episode? What keeps people listening?
Well, that's where their dynamic really comes into play. A typical episode is maybe 30 minutes to an hour. Covers murders, missing persons, serial killers of the core true crime topics. But the structure is pretty unique. Flowers is the main storyteller. She lays out the case, the details, the theories. But Brit Prawat isn't just sitting there. She acts as that, listener stand-in. She reacts, asks questions you might be thinking, shares her own responses. It gives it that conversational feel, like you're right there with them.
Right, like you're dissecting the case together. And they have that completely different segment, too, the Puppet of the Month. Shows the audience connection.
Ah, yeah, Puppet of the Month. It's actually kind of brilliant. Once a month, Brit tells stories about adopted dogs, totally unrelated to crime, obviously.
Right.
But it came directly from fans posting dog pics online. It's this little moment of warmth, cuts through the heavy stuff, and really builds that sense of community, makes listeners feel involved.
And the whole thing started pretty modestly, production-wise, right? Recorded in her home office, I read.
Exactly. Very independent setup. Flowers records at home. Her brother, David Flowers, helps with editing, keeping it in the family.
Oh, okay.
And the production company name Audio Chuck, that's named after her dog, Charlie.
No way.
Yep, and he actually howls at the end of every episode. It's become their signature sound. And that indie vibe, plus that super loyal fan base, let them branch out too. They've taken Crime Junkie on tour. Live shows in, 4 U.S. cities?
Oh.
So it's more than a podcast. It's a whole brand, a community experience.
I think the key takeaway there is how that genuine passion, that authenticity, the friendship, the dog, the home office, really created this intimacy, something bigger media struggles with. It turned listeners into, like, real fans.
Okay, but that kind of massive growth, that intense following, it wasn't all smooth sailing, was it? Especially around sourcing and giving credit. August 2019, things got pretty serious with plagiarism accusations. That really shook things up in the true crime podcast world.
It definitely did.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first big public claim came from Kathy Fry, a writer, former reporter. She alleged, very publicly online, that a Crime Junkie episode from March 2019 about Casey Woody drew heavily from articles she wrote back in 2003 for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, but without proper credit in the podcast audio itself.
Okay, so a serious claim. How did Flowers respond initially?
Well, the immediate reaction was pulling the episode down after Fry went public, but then it was reposted, this time with source notes added online, linking to Fry's work. But, and this was the sticking point, still no verbal credit in the episode.
Oh, okay.
That led to Fry and the newspaper sending a cease and desist letter. They demanded either verbal credit in the show or permanent removal. That's, traditional journalism standards hitting the podcast world.
Right, so it wasn't just if you used it, but how you acknowledged it. And Fry's claim, that kind of opened the door, didn't it? Other people came forward.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like a dam breaking. Stephen Pacheco from Trace Evidence claimed they used his writing on the Asha Degree case without credit. He even posted, side-by-side comparisons online.
Wow.
Robin Warder from the Trail When Cold podcast said they practically read his Reddit post about Henry McCabe verbatim. And it wasn't just podcasters. A Reddit user pointed out huge similarities between a Crime Junkie episode on Kirsten Hadfield and an episode of the TV show On the Case with Paul Azan. Almost word-for-word similarities alleged.
Okay, those are some pretty damning and specific claims from multiple sources. What happened then? What was the final outcome for Crime Junkie?
Well, the result was pretty significant. Crime Junkie ended up removing those episodes, the ones about Casey Woody and Kirsten Hadfield, plus 3 others, all in August 2019. Flowers put out an official statement, but it's, say, carefully phrased. She said the episodes were removed because source material could no longer be found or properly cited. Didn't directly say plagiarism, but she did comment on the need for the podcast industry, which was still kind of new and booming, to develop and evolve its standards on these kinds of issues.
So acknowledging the problem indirectly.
Pretty much. Right. Highlighting that need for clearer rules, clearer ethics, which is still a conversation happening today, honestly.
Right. And did that controversy have any immediate, measurable impact on their popularity? Did the charts reflect it?
Yeah, there was a tangible hit, at least temporarily. The Arkansas Democrat-Gazette reported that Crime Junkie dropped from its usual #1 spot down to #5 on Apple's true crime charts that August. And the whole thing got picked up by iMedia Ethics, they called it, one of the top 5 plagiarism cases of 2019. Yeah, it really highlighted that clash, digital speed versus journalistic rigor, especially on attribution. A big lesson for creators. You can't just ignore those standards anymore.
That's a really key point. But here's the twist, right? Despite all that, the controversy, the scrutiny, Crime Junkie didn't just fade away. It actually seems to have maintained incredible popularity, even gotten praise. It shows some serious resilience.
It really does. It's quite remarkable. Even early on, they were getting noticed. Laura Barcella at Rolling Stone put them on her list of favorite true crime pods back in 2018. That was pretty early.
Yeah.
And Jenny Miller at Vulture pointed out Flowers' really passionate coverage of the April Tinsley case. She'd actually interviewed the mother, people involved in catching the killer.
Yeah.
Showing that deep dive aspect people loved.
And the audience backed them too, right? I remember something about a USA Today podcast bracket.
Yeah. They reached the final championship round in that USA Today tournament in 2019. Shows massive audience engagement right there. And, even that positive review from Podcast Review that praised the research, it was later updated to include a note about the plagiarism stuff. So those issues became part of the story, part of the narrative, but somehow didn't sink the ship. Maybe that audience connection played a role. Looking bigger picture, their sustained success is, well, it's impressive. Especially now, the podcast world is so crowded. In 2020, Spotify called them the second most popular female-hosted podcast on their platform for International Women's Day. That says a lot about their reach, especially with female listeners.
So, huge listener base. Did they start getting industry nods too? Awards, nominations?
We did, yeah. Quality and influence getting recognized. In 2022, they got nominated for Podcast of the Year and Best Crime Podcast at the iHeartRadio Podcast Awards.
Big ones.
Right, not just popularity votes, but industry respect. And maybe the most telling thing, just recently, November 2024, Apple announced Crime Junkie was the #2 most popular show on their entire platform for the whole year.
#2 overall for 2024.
Overall, that's just incredible staying power.
Mm-hmm.
It shows how a really well-made, engaging show, even one that's faced major criticism, can keep its audience and even grow.
Yeah.
It's about that narrative power, that community.
So pulling it all together, what's the big picture here? We've gone from this passion project between two lifelong friends to this absolute true crime giant. Crime Junkie really carved out its own space, hooked millions with these deep dives. But we also saw the bumps, right? Navigating those tough questions about sourcing, ethics in this rapidly changing digital world.
Exactly. And this deep dive, it's more than just the story of one show, It really highlights the responsibilities creators have now, the power of a good story, and that intense loyalty you can build with an audience. It's a good reminder, I think, that everything we consume, podcasts, articles, whatever, has a backstory. And knowing that context, well, it just makes the experience richer for you, the listener. And maybe it leaves you as a question to think about. As we keep getting more and more content thrown at us faster and faster, how do your own expectations change? What do you expect from creators now regarding, where they get their information, originality, being transparent? What standards are you setting?
That's definitely something to chew on. Great point. All right, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks so much for joining us.